Hello and welcome to our protein chat. Protein is such a big topic. I am going to try so hard to keep this to a good time because I could go on for hours about this topic. First of all, I don't want you to be afraid of this topic. Sometimes people think they're going to go away looking like Arnie and being really jacked. That is not going to happen by accident. That is a very difficult thing to do. Also, if you are veggie, please don't worry. I'm not about to tell you to eat meat. I know that can happen to you quite often. That's not the case here. Please don't worry. So, I talk about protein quite a lot in the studio with my girls. It is extremely important for us to concern ourselves with our protein and the quality of protein that we put in our bodies. This doesn't mean to say that it's the only important macronutrient. Of course, it isn't. We want to be eating all of those other good things from our veggies, and you don't have to eat meat either. We can still get the protein from our plant sources. We just need to be more mindful because there's a different protein makeup that we want to be aware of. So let's discuss that in a great way that's going to help you, whichever lifestyle choice you have chosen. Okay, so this conversation has been inspired a little bit by the Mel Robbins podcast when she had on Dr. Lyon, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. She is a very clever woman. She's a physician. She wrote the book Forever Strong, which encourages everybody, including older generations, to strength train in the gym, which is so important because this is something that has been missed for years, and now we're starting to realize how important this is, particularly as we get older, to support our health. So why do we care about our skeletal muscle and a muscle-centric approach? So our skeletal muscle is the largest organ in our body. It is about 40% of our total mass. When we exercise and we contract our muscles, we release this wonderful thing, or these wonderful things called myokines. They mediate conversations between your skeletal muscle and other organs, which is amazing. And they also transport glucose from our bloodstream into our cells. So we have much better blood sugar regulation as well. So very, very important to have healthy skeletal muscle. When we do have healthy skeletal muscle, not only is our blood sugar control better, we have better survivability, because when we are ill or injured, our body relies heavily on our skeletal muscle as a fuel source. So if we have healthy skeletal muscle, we're doing all right. Healthy skeletal muscle provides us better energy, more vitality, increased metabolism, better signaling, just a whole host of benefits. So how do we do that? Protein is obviously a big part of that, and so is strength training. So let's talk about protein first. Protein is made up of 20 amino acids, and 9 of those amino acids are essential. And when we say essential in terms of nutrition, we mean the body cannot make it, so it must be consumed through the diet. Now, that is not the case for everything. Our body can make carbohydrate quite easily. However, this is not the case when it comes to those 9 essential amino acids. So we need to think about our protein quality. So not just looking at a packet and saying that's got protein in it, that'll do. We need to understand the quality, and does it contain those 9 essential amino acids for our healthy skeletal muscle? If we eat a protein forward diet, now this doesn't mean over consuming protein and crowding out all the other good stuff. We do want to eat all of our vitamins and minerals, all of the important things from our veggies that help us and help to maintain our well-being. But we're just going to talk about protein for the most part today, because that is the point of today's topic. But we are not crowding out because of protein. So when we consume an optimal amount of protein, we are more satiated, we're less hungry. It is very difficult to over-consume protein. So if you are hungry, Dr. Lyon says to sit down to a breast of chicken then and eat it. And if you cannot eat that breast of chicken, you're not hungry. Yes, you'll be able to eat a bar of chocolate. Of course you can, because the brain reacts differently to those kind of sugars. And that's not a hunger response. That's something very, very different. So yes, we are better satiated on a higher protein diet. It is a better fuel source in terms of we have essential amino acids in there. The body wants to utilize it, it's not going to waste it. It also has a higher thermic effect. So, in comparison to your other macronutrients, it has a much higher thermic effect, meaning that when you consume it, 20% of the energy stored, or the more utilized term, 20% of the calories within that food will go towards metabolizing that food. So, really, you can kind of take that 20% off. As long as we're talking about pure protein, not if you go and say, well, a big breaded bit of chicken or battered fish, and taking all of the calories in that and then taking the 20% off that is not really going to work so much. But the good thing about this and Dr. Lyon's approach is she doesn't want you to count calories, which is excellent. It's really refreshing to hear that. It's something that I've been coming away from as well. Let's focus on what we can and should be eating rather than what not to eat, because it just gets really monotonous. And she also noticed that when people did do that, when they were restricting calories, which is what we often do with people in larger bodies, then we start to deteriorate their skeletal muscle, and they get into this cycle of not being able to maintain healthy skeletal muscle, and that has a knock-on effect in not being able to maintain your weight. Okay, so she participated in a study which was very interesting. She took menopausal and postmenopausal women, who are a very important group as they have a natural decline in progesterone and estrogen, and there is also a natural imbalance of testosterone at that point in your life. And what that does is it makes you feel really, really tired, exhausted, you can't sleep, and all of that has an impact on your health and the decisions that you make. You cannot exercise quite as well. You're not as efficient when you're exercising because you're so tired and exhausted. You maybe don't eat quite as well, even if you don't notice, and then we start to accumulate a little bit more body fat around the belly, and it's not a fun place to be, and it's not an entirely healthy place to be. So when she participated in this study, she split this group of women into two groups. One of the groups were on a higher protein diet and the other group was not. However, the study was isocaloric. So both groups had the same calories per meal. It's just that one group had more protein, and the group that had more protein in their diet typically lost more fat, even though the calories were the same. So the energy content in the foods were the same. So it shows you that all of these things that we've been talking about, in actual fact, well, the proof is in the pudding. It's there, which is great. Such a great thing to know. So let's have a little think about what she recommends then. So I usually say to my girls, minimum 30 grams per meal. However, this is her breakdown and I like it. So in the morning, your breakfast is called breakfast because we break that overnight fast. So overnight you're not eating, therefore your body is in a fasted situation. And to stimulate your skeletal muscle, Dr. Lyon says you want to consume, on average, about 30 to 50 grams of protein in the morning, which might sound quite tricky initially, particularly if you are used to crowding your plate with carbohydrates. Now, this is not me going against carbohydrates, not at all, but often in this country, we like to overcrowd and overdo the carbohydrates a little bit. So rather than having 2 slices of toast and 1 egg, or 2 slices of toast and 2 eggs, you might want to have 3 eggs and no toast, or 3 eggs and 1 slice of toast, something like that. So you can replace some of that with the increased protein. So typically 3 scrambled eggs for me is actually enough, which might sound bonkers because I am such a hungry person usually, but when it comes to your protein, it fills you up so much that actually 3 scrambled eggs is more than enough for me in the morning. It sees me through quite well till lunchtime. Obviously you can add any veggies to that you like. You can cut up peppers, add in all those goods if you wish. Lunch, she suggests a little bit lighter, so 20 grams. And then for dinner, the same again as breakfast because we are preparing for the next night fast. So again, 30 to 50 grams. So take your protein source, surround it by all those lovely, wonderful, colourful veggies with all your vitamins and minerals, and you should be feeling great. Where this gets a bit tricky is our veggies. Sorry, veggies, but let's try and give you some tips here. So the reason it's tricky is because all protein sources, all of the dietary protein is not made equally. So in your animal sources, we have all 9 essential amino acids. Therefore, it's very easy for meat eaters to get they're good quality protein in, not in terms of where your food's coming from and the farming and all of that. That's a whole different conversation for a whole other day. But in terms of your 9 essential amino acids, that's what we mean in terms of good quality protein here. So easy for the meat eaters. Plant-based foods typically don't have all 9. For the most part, they don't, and you need to be a lot more thoughtful around consuming those 9 essential amino acids. So this is why this conversation is even more important for you. So it can be really tricky. We are restricting our diet, and anytime we restrict our diet, there's usually a little bit of a consequence to that, and we often need to supplement. And I know we don't like to hear that word supplement sometimes, particularly if you're on a whole foods diet and you think I should be able to get this from nature, and I understand that, and that's wonderful, and please be on whole foods diets. They're great and you're doing so many wonderful things for your body. However, it's not always as natural as you might think. As well, there's lots of things that wouldn't typically be there at this time of the year, and it can get very complicated when you really get into the nitty gritty of it all. But what we want to do is to consume protein sources and combine them so that you have the 9 essential amino acids. The only thing is, you might need to overconsume if you want it all to be from food and food alone, and no supplements. So, for example, Dr. Lyon gave the example of if I was to eat a chicken breast or a burger or anything like that, I'm going to naturally get the correct amount of leucine, so one of those amino acids, and you need a specific amount to stimulate your skeletal muscle. I'm going to get enough of that through one chicken breast or one burger or anything like that. Whereas if you were to rely on your quinoa for that, you would need to have 6 cups in that meal, which you just cannot do. That is really unrealistic, and that's why it can be really difficult for veggies. So it can be a good thing to consider supplementing. And if you worry a little bit about protein powders, remember, if you eat cheese, we're talking about curds and whey here. So your curds are your cheese and your whey is your protein powder, for example. But we can also do that, we remember, as an animal product. So think about your pea protein. It is simply coming from your whole foods anyway. It's just that we are taking what we really need in abundance and putting it into a smaller amount that is more manageable in a diet for you to consume, so that you're not having to consume 6 cups of quinoa. All right, so having a little look at your protein powders, most of them these days, even your veggie ones, do contain the 9 amino acids, the 9 essential amino acids. However, do your research just to be sure. And also, you might want to just look at the sugars and things that are going in there. Every brand has a different ethos. Some of them are just cheap, and like any cheap foods, you might end up with lots of sugars in there. So you can have a wee think about that as well. And last but not least, our strength training. So we recommend a minimum of 2 days resistance training per week for you to have optimal skeletal health. So if you're training with me, you're doing great already. Well done. And you probably don't need to think about it much more than that. So yes, anything that puts you against resistance. So if you're holding a weight or if you're utilizing your body as a weight, then that is perfect. Okay, so I hope that covers everything you want to know about protein, or that you didn't know about protein, or that it inspires you to go and have a little bit of a think about your protein. See you later.